I think that the spiritual awakening can happen after a catalyst, like something painful happened, where you've gone through a dark night of the soul, and then you awaken. I think for me, it was more of a gradual thing as well. So I, this happened when I was a kid, and then also when I was a teenager, I also realized that I was different, that I was like, I'm gay, and that's going to be very inconvenient for me. So I repressed that for many years as well. Wasn't loving myself, didn't accept myself completely, coming from a culture that's very macho, sexist culture. 9 boys out of 10 want to become footballers. And things are changing, thank God. But back then, like late 90s, early 2000, it wasn't the same. We didn't have this access to information, and we didn't have the awareness that we're getting today. And so that also, I think, contributed, because for many years I repressed that, and I wasn't loving myself. I didn't accept myself. So when you live with that feeling of not feeling enough, and even carrying a lot of shame and guilt, which, I was also brought up Catholic, and then there's this whole, idea that you're a sin and that kind of stuff, that people know about it. I mean, that didn't help, and that kind of helped in a way, because that was the path that I was supposed to walk. But that contributed as well to my spiritual awakening, in the sense that uh, once I accepted myself, I started really walking the path of self-love, which is also the spiritual path, which I believe we are love and we are light. And when you start loving yourself, you're really loving God, and you're loving the universe.
Hi, it's Calvin Niles, the mindful storyteller, and I am delighted to share with you stories of awakening. Each week, I'm going to be talking to people from around the world of various backgrounds and experiences. People I love, I know, and people I admire, but also those who are completely new to me. One thing all my guests will have in common is that they have been through a journey of awakening. By awakening, I mean a call to higher consciousness and deeper self-awareness beyond material reality. These stories will be real, challenging, funny, stimulating, and insightful. We're going to take our good time with these conversations. So listen from your comfy chair with your favorite drink, or on your weekend stroll, your morning routine, or whatever makes you happy. Stories of awakening with me, Calvin Niles, and I look forward to you tuning in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Stories of Awakening. I know every episode I say I'm really excited, I'm delighted, I'm happy, all of that. But I really am super happy to have my brother from Brazil, Will Caminada, here. We go back a very long way. And Will's got an interesting story, all of which I don't actually know. So, Will, I'm so glad that you came on to make time for us to talk and learn more about your journey.
It's my pleasure. I'm really excited to be here too. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's a delight. I remember seeing some of your stuff online recently, and I know you have been talking more about some of the really powerful experiences that you've had and are still having. I'm on your mailing list, of course, which I get to see some of the interesting insights. So I'd love to know where it all began for you, what catalyzed your call to higher consciousness, and what's your story?
Yeah, I love talking about um, the spiritual awakening. And I, for me, I see the spiritual awakening as a journey, as a cycle. And I think it comes in waves, even before you're aware of the spiritual awakening itself. And so I guess for me, what when it really started was when I was a kid and I was 8 years old, and it was me, my mom, my dad, and my brother. And then one night, literally overnight, my dad had a heart attack and he transitioned from this physical realm into the spiritual realm. And obviously, it was a traumatic experience, painful. Um, but I also remember when it happened, just questioning a lot of things that not every 8 year old questions. And things like, is there an afterlife? What happens when you die? Can I talk to him? Can he hear me? Where is he? Um, and I didn't have the answers, and I also didn't have anybody in my family or friends that could sort of guide me into that spiritual awakening that I was having, but I had no idea that it was a spiritual awakening. So this is what I mean by, your spiritual awakening is happening before you're even aware of it. And then I guess because I was open to that, and I was always, I've always been a very sensitive kid, the artist of the family. And I guess because I had this opening in my heart, I started having dreams where my dad would show up. And the first time he showed up, it was crazy scary because it felt super real. And in my conscious mind, I knew that he wasn't physically here. And so I just woke up and I was scared, but at the same time, I was like, that felt really real. Um, and then it happened, the dreams started happening more often. And gradually, I started to sort of develop a relationship even with my father, because he would comfort me. And, at first, like the next dream, he would just show up and I wasn't scared anymore. And then the next dream, he would say something. The next dream, I would hug him. The next dream, I would ask him something. And it didn't happen in a few weeks. It happened in, like, I don't know, 10 years. But it really developed. And I started believing that there is really something beyond this physical realm, and really believing that we were having this transcendental relationship. Um, and so I guess that's the beginning of it. But I also think that there is a time where things just become really clear, and it's like a switch that goes on, and then you can see things more clearly, and there's more light and you can see things with colors. And that only happened years after, when I was 30. So it was like 9 years ago when I was living in London for the second time. So I'm kind of jumping, but yeah, feel free to ask me anything, because otherwise I'm just gonna keep
Yeah,
going.
please keep going. Yeah. So the first one was kind of like an unconscious experience where, you realize now, and this is a common thing coming up now. I've done so many of these conversations, and a lot of people go, "Oh, hang on a minute, that when that happened, I realized that was actually part of my awakening." So I guess in that moment you weren't conscious of it, but then you started to look back with new eyes, and then you saw it differently, and you saw that that was an integral part of this kind of higher consciousness. And it's also interesting, you had this curiosity there. What happens when you die? What where's dad gone, and things like that. So did that kind of follow you all the way through your life till you hit 30, kind of always in the back of your mind? um or what was it that actually did happen when you hit 30 that caused you to then really be conscious that something bigger is happening?
Yeah, I think that the spiritual awakening can happen um, after a catalyst, like something painful happened, or you've gone through a dark night of the soul, and then you awaken. I think for me, it was more of a gradual thing as well. So I, this happened when I was a kid, and then also when I was a teenager, I also realized that I was different. That I was like, I'm gay, and that's gonna be very inconvenient for me. So I repressed that for many years as well. Um, wasn't loving myself, didn't accept myself completely, coming from a culture that's very macho, sexist culture. 9 boys out of 10 want to become footballers. And things are changing, thank God. But back then, like late 90s, early 2000, it wasn't the same. We didn't have this access to information, and we didn't have the awareness that we're getting today. And so that also, I think, contributed, because for many years I repressed that, and I wasn't loving myself. I didn't accept myself. So when you live with that feeling of not feeling enough, and even carrying a lot of shame and guilt, which, I was also brought up Catholic, and then there's this whole, idea that you're a sin and that kind of stuff, that people know about it. I mean, that didn't help, and that kind of helped in a way, because that was the path that I was supposed to walk. But that contributed as well to my spiritual awakening, in the sense that once I accepted myself, I started really walking the path of self-love, which is also the spiritual path, which I believe we are love and we are light. And when you start loving yourself, you're really loving God, and you're loving the universe. The other thing that happened as well during my 20s, which um, wasn't planned, but it was obviously a very spiritual experience, was that I actually saw an energy that felt like my dad. And that was the only time in my life that I actually saw things with my physical eye. Because other than that, I've had spiritual experiences and altered states of consciousness, but it's all something that's happening within, in my heart, in my third eye. But that was really powerful as well. And I had what I know today was a telepathic communication with him. And I guess after that, I was like, if I don't believe that, then I don't know, what I should do. But to be honest, it wasn't that really was the catalyst for my spiritual awakening, because after that experience, I kind of just held on to the feeling and the emotion of the experience and the message. And I did explore a little bit of what it could be, but I didn't start that quest. I wasn't committed to really understanding what happened. And that just came after, years after. And I guess what happened really was, I was fine here in Brazil, where I am now, and I had a good job, a career, had my family around me, my friends, everything was fine. There was nothing like, hey, you really need to start over. You're really hitting rock bottom. Other than this feeling of not enoughness, and also this calling to pursue my dream to become a recording artist, which is something that I had when I was a teenager. And also, it really helped me in my journey. Like I say that art really like saved me in many times, and kept me sane, because it was like the channel that I had to really express all of the things that I was suppressing.
Thanks for being part of this conversation. One of the things I'm learning during this series is that the chapters of each person's story are still being written. If you are conscious of a new story wanting to emerge in your life, but the clutter of your mind is slowing you down, a simple way to start is by decluttering your physical space. Subscribe and download my free ebook, Simplify Your Life, helping you to declutter and make way for the things that matter. Download your free copy at www.simplifyandmakespace.com.
I guess when I made the decision to go to England to study and to go after this dream, which I had already done when I was 20, and then I always had this calling in the back of my mind, and there was something about England. There is something about England that it's really a soul connection. And I guess when I moved, basically I went like pursuing my dream, thinking that the dream was one thing, but I ended up finding something else, which was my soul. And it was this spiritual awakening. I found a lot of healing. I connected with my soul friends, my soul family, your sister, your mom, huge part of my spiritual awakening. And yeah, so there wasn't necessarily anything that was the catalyst other than me moving and having this new chapter.
Yeah.
And I guess since I mentioned your sister and your mom, they were really like a huge, they played a huge role in my spiritual awakening. I'm super grateful for them. They know that. And your sister, because many things, but one thing that I always remember is that we started having this life coaching sessions, and I had tried to meditate before, but didn't really know what I was doing and thought I was doing it wrong, all that kind of thing. And she just gave me like a 5-minute visualization audio, and she said, do it every day in the morning. And I started doing it. And that was like the catalyst for me to start my daily meditation practice. And I never stopped since then, because 5 minutes didn't feel enough. And then I wanted to do 10 minutes. And then I was looking for like meditations on YouTube. And I started like developing this spiritual practice.
Yeah.
And your mom, really, I consider her like my spiritual mentor, because she gave me the support and guidance that I didn't have when I was 8 and I had all these questions. And I don't even know if you know this, but we had these meetings, and she would just share stories, and I would just learn so much from her. And like the first meeting we had, she told me the same thing happened to me when I was 8. And so we had this instant connection. And one of the things that I remember, I mean, many things, but one of the things that I remember is she said, this happened to me when I was 8, and now I'm 70 something, and I'm still dealing with it. I'm still in this healing journey, in different layers. So something that I also truly believe, that the healing journey is like peeling off those layers and getting deeper and deeper.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's I didn't know that actually. So thank you for telling me. And I can see how you've got this part of yourself that kind of wants to burst out. And were you conscious, by the way, of that by this time? Were you able to correlate truly accepting and loving yourself as you are with a waking up process? Or was that point at 30 that you mentioned, was that like more of the gradual kind of ripples that were happening, that you talked about the gradual phase?
Yeah, I think it happened at the same time. Like when I started meditating, having this spiritual practice. I think for me, that was like what I consider the big wave of awakening, when really like the switch went on, and then things have started to be clear and the colors were more vibrant, which can be sometimes a little deceiving in the spiritual awakening journey. But that, that first moment when everything just sort of makes sense. I guess one of the other things that I was doing as well, because I was writing music, so it was my practice to do writing and journaling and free writing. So that was also another way that I found to practice and to even channel information. It
Yeah.
was a very like um lonely journey, but not in the sense that it was bad. It was just like me trying to experiment and trying to figure out things.
Yeah.
But it was more about the feeling of, it was just a realization. It was like, hey, I just really need to love myself and accept myself and be my most authentic self. And if people like me the way I am, love me the way I am, then that's great. If not, then that's not really, my it's not really my problem. Obviously, I mean, saying this, it's easy, but when you do care about the people that you love, you want to be accepted, you want to be um loved. And I think for me, it was really like my family, like my mom and my brother. um because I for a long time in my life, I wasn't, it's not that I wasn't real with them, but there was a portion of my real self that they didn't know. So it was always like incomplete, and it was really painful for me to live with them, and them not knowing this. And I guess like
Meaning
my
you're talking about this, your sexuality.
yeah, 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 yeah. And my brother was like I say like my greatest teacher in a way, because he's so different to me. He's like the typical, stereotype of,
He's a
Brazilian man.
Brazilian, all Brazilian man.
Yeah.
He's not Brazil's goalkeeper or anything, is he?
Well, he wanted to be, yeah. But like for me, it was like if he could see me as I am and still love me, then that would mean, yes, that would mean something. And if he didn't, that would also mean something like a lesson of like, are you really willing to love yourself regardless?
Yeah.
But he did, and he does. And today we're good, and I feel really happy with being me and authentic. And yes, I think about it like, why didn't I do it before? But it was just my path. And I think, by going back to your question, I do think that me awakening spiritually really um, brought up that sort of courage to just really embrace who I am, and show all my colors. And I also attribute to my music, because when I started writing, I started really expressing these really deep emotions onto paper. um and again, looking at it as a channel to express my authentic self.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask you that question a second ago, and you already answered it, which was what came first? Was it that you sort of basically told your family, "Hey, there's a part of me you don't know, part of me you haven't even recognized," and then that sort of fueled the spiritual journey, or the spiritual journey started and that fueled your like self acceptance in some ways. Um, but I guess you can't really separate them, can you? It's like saying, I'll give you the one side of the coin and you keep give me the other side.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting, because it's still, I still feel like it's kind of gradual, in the sense that I told my mom first, think maybe I was like 28, which is kind of late when, especially like kids nowadays, if they're listening to this, they'll be like,
What?
dude.
I told
But
my mom when I was 5. What are you talking about?
yeah, yeah. And like I'm non-binary, right? Like today there's like so many options, which is really incredible.
Yeah.
But then I wouldn't say I was going through like this big wave of conscious spiritual awakening then. And I did think like a lot of things would change, but it did change when it comes to my relationship with my mom, but my relationship with myself didn't change too much. And that's why I think, like my brother was like sort of like the big boss of the game in a way. And it only happened after I went through this big wave of the spiritual awakening when I was living in England.
Yeah. Wow, there's big moments, huge moments. And I've known you for a very, very, very long time, but I wouldn't have known the kind of struggle that you were also enduring at that time as well. So when did you kind of start to use language like you know, you started to channel things and stuff like that? There was a point at which you began to realize certain things, which then invariably almost expand your vocabulary. And I find it's a really interesting area because, without labeling, being able to label something is very hard to make it conceptually real anyway, from a conceptual point of view. But it also really helps us, doesn't it, to be able to say, well, this is what the experience was like. So when would you be able to say that language started to shift for you? Can you remember, you know, moments of discovery around that?
Um, yes, I think like when you commit to walking the spiritual path, so when you have this conscious wave of awakening and the light is on, and then you're committed to keep walking, there's no other way. Like you're going to expand not just your vocabulary, but your experiences as well. And it's not all like light and flowers and glitter. I think that some people think that when you go through a spiritual awakening, it's like all light and love and everything chilled, and you're just meditating and doing yoga every day. And trust me, I've gone through that. And but also like thanks to your mom, she let me know, like, look, you're gonna feel like you're invincible and everything is wonderful, but you're really on a journey to actually face your shadow and heal your traumas. And I think that's when people start to kind of be scared or maybe stuck in this journey, because you got to be really like committed to your healing journey and to yourself, to that self-love. And and the ego is so smart that it can make you believe that it's the spiritual ego. It makes you believe that you're all spiritual, but you're not going as deep as you can in your own healing journey. So I guess for me, it's because I was going through the experiences, and I realized that the awakening is very much connected to this healing journey. And once you heal something, and again, I believe that healing is also a continuous journey. But once you like peel off a layer, there's another layer and another layer. And as you keep walking this, you start expanding your consciousness. And so this is what I talk about today, because like fast forward to now, like I'm helping people going through their spiritual awakening and their healing journey. And this is something that I talk about, which is this cycle. I see it as a trinity, like the mind, body, and soul or spirit, but like the awakening, the healing, and the expansion of your consciousness. They're not as linear as I'm telling you now, but for me, it's really like a cycle, because it's gonna happen again. Like the awakening is gonna happen in a different level, and then the healing will continue. And even though that might sound like, oh my God, this is like an endless journey, like, and sometimes you might feel like I'm tired of this, but it's all part of the process. And I think for me, it was like me going through the experiences and realizing that it is a continuous journey, but, you know, really being committed to this path. And to answer your question with the vocabulary thing, I think for me, I do think that when you start learning more about it on a like mental level, just really acquiring more knowledge as well as wisdom. I think the wisdom you acquire with the experience, and the knowledge you acquire, you know, by listening to a podcast, reading books, watching videos. And I've always been really interested in spirituality and metaphysics and this kind of thing. And so, and I remember like when I was in London going through that first wave of a spiritual awakening, I was like kind of obsessed with this theme. Something really shifted. I was like reading all the books by Dr. Wayne Dyer, Eckhart Tolle, and watching Oprah's Super Soul Sunday. You know, I really liked it, and I still do. But I think there's a difference. It's as if back then I was really hungry for it, to the point that, you know, I was getting too much information and not giving myself time to integrate, which is also something that your mom taught me. You know, you're going to be really obsessed with these things, but take it slow. You know, you have your whole life to learn about these things, and the learning is never ending. But it really stuck with me. And even to this day, I just love watching videos, reading books, but with I guess it's a more relaxed way. You know, I'm not like desperate to learn everything, because I know that there is always more to learn.
Yeah, yeah, that's really powerful. The way you talk about my mother, I'm imagining the Oracle in the Matrix. I'm like, wow, that's how my mother looks to other people. Cool.
That's not your experience.
um. So yeah. So where did this then bring you? Because you know, you talked about music being helpful for you, and your sort of art and creative expression being a really helpful tool, I guess, for you to express yourself, and process a lot of stuff. And then you moved through to another phase where you start to become more intentional or conscious about your own spiritual journey from a actual spirituality point of view in terms of labeling. And I use this very language very lightly, because of course everything can be a spiritual experience. Art could be spiritual, music can be spiritual, dancing, talking, what we're doing now, sleeping could be a spiritual experience. So
Yeah.
I guess so I'm just trying to segment the phases from, you know, being an artist and knowing that it made you feel good, to then waking up to this kind of, wow, there's all of this. I want to learn more. And then this hunger sort of took you, a current in a way took you. Um, how has that unfolded for you? Did that create any problems for you? Did you have kind of burnout or anything like that? Or is it just continue to feed you to where you got to now, or maybe it's another outcome?
Yeah, I would say that there were a few other waves of awakening after this big one, if you will.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, I went to London to pursue that dream, and then in pursuing that dream, I found something else that was, my healing, my soul, and I was fortunate enough to be able to express this through music. And when I was living there, I had this artist project, so I released my original music. And at the end of my stay there, I had this thing that I really wanted to live in England, like for the rest of my life, because also I was building, those connections in the music scene, in the music industry. I'd found my tribe, and I just had this thing in my mind, which today I know it was an ego thing. Like I was resisting something, and the universe sort of orchestrated things in a way that really kind of in a way forced me to let go of this resistance. So that for me was another spiritual awakening, because there was a time that I just went, a lot of things were happening, and it was like a visa issue. Like your mom knows and your sister know all about it, because I was telling them. But for me, it was just kind of like a lesson of surrender and trust, to really like surrender to something that's beyond my control or beyond what I think I want. And then that journey started, this journey of surrender, which is, it may sound like it's very beautiful, but when you're in it, it's like crazy. Like you don't know what's like, you feel at the same time that you feel like you have no control or power over anything, you just feel like there's a higher force guiding you and showing you just the next step.
Yeah.
And that's when
The invisible hand.
Yeah,
Ushered
yeah,
you along the way. And you were conscious of that.
I was. And I was conscious in the sense that I knew the universe was giving me opportunities to put into practice the things that I was reading about.
Okay.
And I remember I was actually reading a book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael A.
Yeah.
Singer at the
Yeah.
time, and not really understanding on a rational level. But then when I was sort of given this opportunity to really surrender to and let go of what I think it's right for me, and that's when I just said, F it, I'm just going to Thailand. and and it was like one of the most magical experiences and most healing experiences as well.
So did you have
Because,
can I just ask about that?
sure.
Because this is quite a common thing where sometimes people end up in some very unusual places. Not that Thailand's unusual, but people end up going somewhere that's off their path or their plan or what have you. So it's really where I'm going. And so you wanted to basically make your life in England, and then you're saying that kind of circumstances were forcing you to surrender because you were trying to force one, I guess, one version of reality that you saw, but I don't know, the rest of life wasn't playing game.
Yeah.
Where did the Thailand thing come? How did that arise, and how did you choose Thailand? I mean, did you spin a globe and then just go there, or was the divine hand guiding you? Let me rephrase that. I'm sure the divine hand was guiding you, but were you aware that you were being called to Thailand at that time? How did that even unfold? Thailand just came out of the blue.
Yeah, it sounds really random, and it kind of was for me at the time too, but it was me like learning to surrender and listening to this divine guidance. Um, because I just remember going, well, I'm not gonna choose to stay here, but at the same time, it was like a bureaucracy thing with visa and stuff. And I said, I have to leave the country. Where am I going? And I started thinking, and for me, I always wanted to go to India just because in my mind, I was like, India is the place to go to if you want to, deepen your spiritual knowledge or wisdom or practices. But it was like little signs, and a friend of mine had been there, had stayed for a month. She did like a yoga training, and she told me, I think you would like it. And at first I resisted because I was like, no, India is
Not
the
my
place
plan.
that
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I thought it was really random. Like I never ever thought about going to Thailand. But then it was really crazy because everywhere I looked, I saw Thai. It's
uh,
like everywhere I looked
so it
on
was
the
like a
internet.
messenger came in a way for it to you.
Yeah.
Mm.
And the one time that I was like, I made the decision, it sounds very silly, but I woke up and there was a notification on my phone. Someone was following me and her name was Thai. And I just went, okay, I think
I got
that's
it.
it.
Yeah.
I
Sign
got it.
number 254. All right. Got it.
Yeah.
Check.
Yeah. Exactly. And then I surrendered, and I think it's good that I'm saying this because for me that was kind of like the kickstart of this surrender, my own surrender experiment, because there was a lot of transformation that happened when I was there, just spiritually, emotionally, physically, um, so many realizations, a lot of spiritual experiences like lucid dreams. I had my first breathwork experience as well. Um, Really amazing, but it had its purpose, even though I kind of wanted to be there as well. And again, it was like my ego saying like, it would be really awesome if you lived here, right? But then there was this other thing going, but there's more. Like, go, keep going. And so I went back to England and then decided, and I sort of finished this chapter by releasing my EP, doing a concert, and really feeling like, okay, like this, I came here to do one thing, and I think I did it. Even though I didn't become, the pop star number one in the charts as I imagined years ago, but it felt right. It felt like I fulfilled what I came here to do. And today I even think that I went there to really heal, and to really go through this spiritual awakening. And after that, I did also like past life regressions, and I know that there's like past life stuff as well in England. That's why I always had this calling to live there and to go there.
That's it.
But also,
That's interesting. I'd love to hear um, where you started to, because I mean, from a Catholic upbringing to start talking about past lives is quite a big shift. So when that, I guess, acceptance of different lifetimes became true for you would also be an interesting thing. Yeah. So when did this acknowledgement of past lives and stuff come to you? Was that a significant moment?
I guess, um, when you start walking this path, you start realizing that there's so much out there, so much information, so many different types of healing modalities, so many places that you can explore, and so many routes that you can take. Um, I think for me, the past life wasn't necessarily like the path that I decided to take. It happened, but it wasn't like super. I mean, it is in a way because I think everything is just connected. Um, but it started with me just experimenting with guided meditations and really tapping into um, my Akashic records. And again, these things that I didn't even know the words back then, but you just start learning. And I guess when you have that match, that combination between personal experiences, acquiring wisdom, and then learning the terminologies or learning from books and videos, whatever, it's really powerful because then it's like things start sinking in,
Yeah,
and you have these aha moments. And for me, that's what the expansion of consciousness is.
yeah,
Um, but yes, I guess that, back to your question, of like, how did I go from going through a spiritual awakening into talking about the expansion of consciousness and channeling. And because today, I have this sort of communication with my spirit guides, and I talk about, multidimensionality, which is kind of like for me, like a step further to what I was doing. It's just the same thing, but just in a more expanded way, I guess.
yeah. It's funny because like Marvel, I love talking about that with my sons, the whole Marvel universe. My sons know it much better than I do, to be fair. Um, but I look at a lot of the conversations going on around multidimensionality now and all of this kind of stuff and multiverses. I just watched a film recently called Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's like a comedy slash sci-fi. And it kind of addresses a lot of these, I guess, challenges is probably a better word. A lot of our assumptions of time and things like that. So I'm guessing that you continued in your journey to grow from sort of waking up 28, accepting yourself, growing, spiritually questioning, and then with practice and stuff like that, you started to expand your awareness into these areas. So this has led you now to what? Where who's the new version of Will Caminada as of today? What is that? Where's the story kind of brought you to in its evolution?
Yeah. Well, I think that a turning point would actually be just going back to releasing my music and leaving London. And then I kind of became like a nomad. I lived in Germany and then in the US. But in that journey, I really went through a phase of the death of the ego again. And what that meant in more like practical terms was realizing that the dream that I always had wasn't really the dream that I had now.
Mm.
It's like I lived my whole life wanting a dream, and then fast forward, I'm in Los Angeles, living at the like mecca of music and whatever, like the top of the mountain, if you will, for
Yeah,
any artist,
yeah,
and feeling completely empty and feeling completely lost. Like, what have I been doing, all this time, kind of thing, like pursuing a dream that I'm thankful for because it led me to where I am today. But at the time, I was just like, kind of really like, it is a death of the ego, which doesn't feel good because you just feel like nothing makes sense and you're completely like lost in life. But it's part of the process, and that's why I believe that the spiritual awakening is a continuous journey, and it happens in waves. Because for me, that was another spiritual awakening that made me go, wait a second, what do I really want? Who am I really? And these questions that you keep asking, and it's good to ask, for as long as you're alive.
Yeah.
But then I remember that the dream shifted. It wasn't so much about making music and just wanting to be at the top of the pops and cover of Billboard magazine kind of thing. And so the songs became a book. It's the book behind me, because I was like sharing the story behind each song, and that became another dream to like start writing and really expressing my story and hopefully inspiring others. But it was kind of like a quick thing. I think things just started to shift really quickly after I went through this acceptance even of the death of the ego, another one, if you will, because I started producing meditations and wanting to help people to access that that inner guidance, that soul, really, which is something that I had gone through. And so I had this. So my EP is called Soul Art: From Darkness to Light, a continuous journey towards your essence, which I believe is what this journey is all about. But then the name Soul Art was already taken by this woman, and she took my book out of Amazon. She took my website out of. Anyway, it's a story that, it's a very 3D thing that happened. And at the time I was like, whoa, this is really like, why is this happening? It's just like a word that meant something for me and had nothing to do with her. And also, like, a lot of people had the same word, the same name in different parts of the world. So I didn't think it was going to be a problem. And obviously, again, there was this resistance at first, because I was like, I'm building this brand, and I'm, for me, it was like finding your art through your soul and finding your soul through your art. That was my idea. And when this name was sort of taken out of me, at first there was a resistance, and then I just remembered everything that I was going through, and I was like, there must be a higher purpose for this. And I just accepted it, and I just let go. I went, it's all good. My guides are guiding me into something else. And that's when I really embraced the spiritual guidance. And I just went, maybe it's not about the art. It's not about the soul. It's really something bigger. And I started really developing this brand and this work, trying to really help others going through their spiritual awakening, their healing journey. And from this moment of acceptance and sort of embracing, like actually taking the label and saying, yes, I am a spiritual guide, even though I know that labels are just really labels, things that we have because that's how we function in this 3D world. But really, there's something powerful about accepting the path and going, yes, this is the label, and this is who I am, and I'm gonna keep going. And really, I still feel the expansion, like every month and every year. Like, sometimes it's even hard to like keep up, because I'm like, you asked me to send a bio, and I have a bio, like, but it keeps changing, and I'm like, I have to like update my bio every year, because I think that's the beauty of this journey. Really, it's like, it is kind of never ending, especially if you're thinking about parallel lives and the evolution of consciousness and your place, your role in this infinite universe. It is never ending. It is infinite. But at the same time, it's really beautiful, and it's really a blessing to be able to have this life and experience this human experience with this awareness. And that's basically, that's what I want for people too, for them to have this human experience with an expanded awareness, which is something that I didn't have years ago.
Wow. Will, thank you. Man, I've actually learned some new stuff about you actually in this conversation. And this is not the first time I've had somebody who I've known for so many years and learned a lot more about them. So I just want to first of all say thank you. I would love to have another conversation with you as things continue to unfold. But so let's call this tranche 1. But thank you so much for making the time and for really inspiring me too as well, actually, to continue with developing myself, and hopefully other people will feel inspired after listening to your story to develop themselves as well. So yeah, that was an introductory conversation, I would say, to the multi-talented Will. But all that's left from me is just thank you so much for your time, thank you so much for your courage, and I was gonna say thank you for shining your light, but I think I'm gonna tweak that and say thanks to Ras Stimulant, who I had a conversation with recently. Thank you for reflecting the light in the world. And I look forward to catching up with you in another episode.
Thank you. I am so grateful for this opportunity. And yes, it's really a beautiful conversation, beautiful moment to talk about it with you. It's like almost like a full circle moment, given that your mom has been my spiritual mentor, and I'm so grateful for you, for your family, and it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. Thank you for tuning in to this conversation with me on the Stories of Awakening podcast. It was an absolute delight to have you here. And this is just a reminder to head over to simplifyandmakespace.com to collect your free decluttering workbook to simplify your life and make way for the things that matter.